back on Born Before 64 and our new wonderful piece of our show, Timeless Performer, with two timeless performers. And that is Melanie Shackman and Jerry Witkowski. And you know, you share the Polish, ancestry just like I do. Mm-hmm. So your name means what?
Cowherder.
Cowherder, and I'm Little Loaf of Bread. But my father came from a family of entertainers and musicians from Poland, and my father was a really famous jazz musician. Oh. So I grew up with music all the time, and I love the classics, and I love everything. So maybe that's the reason why I started with the violin first. They just couldn't handle it, remember? So my violin was only this big, right? And so I wonder how long it takes to make one of those type of violins and a small one. So how many hours does it take to make that piece?
Well, a good handmade instrument, probably about 150 hours for me to make one from start to finish with varnish and
with
rubbing
everything.
it out and all that.
Right.
Your little instruments are commercially made, and the most of them right now, I mean, they used to come from Germany back in the earlier days up to about the 1980s, right. 85, 90. And then the Chinese have taken over the whole market as far
right.
as making these little instruments and using them for rental programs for a child to get started on.
Do most children, after they get through a certain period, they buy their instrument?
Yeah, well, not all of them. I mean, some of them quit, but a lot of them will, by 7th or 8th grade, are about ready for a full size. Every right. child's a little different.
Right. Now, Melanie, you teach. Mm-hmm. How many violins do you actually have?
Actually, I just have my one violin. Now, there's another one in our family which belonged to my great-grandfather, which my mom has right now. And I played on that for a little bit, but then when I went into high school, then we purchased the one that I still
right.
play.
So it's usually an expensive little deal, isn't it?
It can be. I mean, a good basic outfit's probably close to $500, mm-hmm. and they can go up to thousands of dollars, just
right.
thousands.
What's the most?
It depends on the child's ability.
Right.
I mean, if the child warrants a $3,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 instrument.
I mean, it amazes me today the children that are out there that are performing at such young ages. Mm-hmm. And they're geniuses, some of them. I mean, there's an opera singer that was on one of the reality shows that she's only 10 years old, and everybody kept on saying, you're 10 years old. And people didn't believe it, So what's been the youngest student each one of you's had?
That I've taught?
Uh-huh.
Probably my youngest student was probably a 4th grader. That would be my youngest student that I've ever taught.
Melanie?
Well, the youngest student that I've had was a 5-year-old that was in kindergarten. So, and actually this particular student definitely had musical talent, but took lessons for a couple years and then decided that he wanted to then pursue the guitar and piano, which I encourage as well. I was glad that he had the experience with violin, and I just, my goal with teaching is not to, produce a professional violinist, but to instill a love of music where they can carry that through their whole life. And if they do turn into a professional violinist or, someone who continues to play into adulthood, great. But
Do you have parents that hone over the kids? I know that my parents, and one of the things that I didn't want to do, Jerry, was I think that was the thing. My father was such a perfectionist with me that it didn't encourage me. It kind of discouraged me. And I loved the piano, and I loved the organ. And now I'd like to take lessons again because I really love music. And it's like a challenge now that you want to go back to it. And that's the nice thing about music. You're never too old. It doesn't make any difference, right? It's a love of that art and what you produce out of that instrument. Mm-hmm. And I think you have a saying, Jerry, that you use in your practice of your show. You said that it's the love of the actual instrument, or is the love of music, or what?
I mean, when you're actually making an instrument?
Right.
I think you make a connection. It's more of than, I wouldn't call it so much love, but a connection with the wood, and that you're working. You can feel what it's doing when you're graduating it, and you have to tap tone it. You have to tune it. You actually have to tune the instrument, and you tune the back and the top, and there's a feel. You have a feel that what the instrument's going to do when it's done.
And has there ever been an instrument that you've had that's better than others as far as tonal quality?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, I have won 3 awards for my violas, 3 for viola tone. I don't have my last violin that I just made. It was sent to Atlanta to a young lady that's trying it out. I personally think, as a violin, it's the best violin I've ever made.
Well, that's pretty exciting, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I mean, she says she likes it. I don't know.
Well, what's really very, very strange is that, when you finish a piece of art, and you're really an artist, in this, is it hard to give them up?
Oh, easily. I mean, yes, it's an art, but it's also...
It's part of your soul?
Well, it's part of your soul, but you want it to be played. And I can't give it the justice. And my wife always tells me I'd stop playing the violin when I was in school. Because I'm not a good violinist. I'm not.
Let me say that on that note, we'd like to hear you both perform. And what are you going to be performing for our audience now?
We're going to do a Schoen's Farewell, which was from the PBS Civil War series. And Melanie's going to play violin, and I'll play a little guitar.